Before proceeding, viewers are advised to exercise caution. The following is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is a verbatim reproduction of testimony in federal court in the case of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric, like the final scene of an expensive Hollywood thriller. Only this time, it was all real. Cameras, journalists, security guards, lawyers, and faces frozen in tension. Everyone in the room, from prosecutors to the public, understood that they were not just attending a court hearing, but witnessing a moment that would go down in history. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a man who had reigned supreme in the hip-hop industry for decades and built a nightlife empire, now looked like the fall of a giant, with a loud echo against a backdrop of camera flashes. The audience sat in complete silence, holding their breath, when an unexpected witness entered the courtroom. Ben Affleck. Not a rapper, not a business partner, not a former bodyguard, but him. The very same Batman, Oscar winner, Hollywood darling. And now, he's not on a movie set, but under oath, ready to say something so important that he was called to court in connection with Diddy's alleged crimes. All of a sudden, the trial became something more than just a case about drugs, racketeering, or violence. The atmosphere became almost political, as if someone had launched an operation to expose the connections between show business, money, and something much darker. The judge watched intently, almost emotionless, but his fingers betrayed his tension as he tapped them lightly on the table. The jury was also transfixed. The lawyers exchanged glances. Journalists scribbled notes and immediately sent them to their editors. They knew there would be headlines that would attract millions of views. No one expected Affleck to be the star witness. His appearance added a touch of surrealism to the whole case. It was as if someone had mixed a Netflix drama with reality, and now we were all the audience. When Ben Affleck began to speak, the room fell into almost complete silence. Even the security guards on duty, usually indifferent to anything that didn't concern security, froze in tension. Affleck spoke calmly, almost casually, but his every word sounded like a gunshot. According to him, he had known for many years that Sean Diddy Combs was involved in more than just the music business. Behind the glamour, parties, and big hits, there was a much darker reality. Affleck claimed that Combs was at the head of an entire underground network involved in money laundering, drug trafficking, blackmail, and even human trafficking. Not just a few random incidents, but a full-fledged, well-organized system with a hierarchy, finances, and cover. Affleck said that at first he couldn't believe that he himself had witnessed this dark side of show business. But with each passing year, the strange coincidences and disturbing details became more and more numerous. So he began to gather evidence. He wrote a diary, every day, according to him. He recorded not only his impressions, but also specific conversations, suspicious encounters, people he saw around Combs, and how they behaved. He saved everything: receipts, screenshots, photos, names, dates. According to Affleck, living with this knowledge was terrifying. He felt like he was being watched, that he might be followed. There were moments when he thought about giving up, deleting his notes, leaving, forgetting. Inside him wouldn't let him do it. He claimed that he understood that sooner or later the truth would come out. And if he could play the role of the one who untangled this knot, then his years of silence would not have been in vain. Affleck did not play the hero. On the contrary, he looked tired. But it was this fatigue that made his story even more convincing. He spoke like a man who had kept a heavy truth inside him for a long time and finally decided to reveal it. The court listened to him almost as if it were a confession. When it came to presenting evidence, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. If before it had resembled a tense drama, now it was more like a spy thriller with elements of documentary film. Affleck, without flinching, handed the court what he said he had been collecting for years: the very diary. It was not a notebook with rough notes, but a thick, almost archival folder with a chronology of events, starting with his first suspicions and ending, as he put it, with points of no return. The diary contained descriptions of meetings, names of people, exact dates, times, and even geolocations. Some entries looked like scenes from a parallel reality. Who, with whom, why, and where. With such detail that it seemed as if it had been observed not by an actor, but by a trained undercover agent. Every page of the diary said that he wasn't just observing, he was systematically conducting an investigation. Unofficial, but impressively detailed. But that wasn't all. Affleck also gave the court copies of audio recordings. According to him, they contained conversations between Combs and other influential figures, including people from the music and political worlds. The judge interrupted the hearing to verify the authenticity of the recordings, but even before that, everyone understood that the case was much deeper than expected. Next came the photographs. Some, according to Affleck, were taken in elite clubs, others at private parties. They show faces that the public is used to seeing on the red carpet. There were also screenshots of correspondence mentioning closed routes, special guests, and clean deliveries. These phrases are now evidence, not just vague fragments of dialogue. And finally, the strangest thing, diagrams of tunnels. Yes, tunnels. Affleck claimed that there is a system of underground passages beneath some elite clubs in Los Angeles and Miami. They allegedly connect nightclubs with private warehouses, villas, and even locations outside the city. According to him, these routes were used to transport people and cargo, the very same ones mentioned in the diary. These diagrams seem too detailed to be a fantasy. If Affleck was to be believed, a whole parallel system was hidden beneath the glamorous nightlife, just like in the movies, only without the special effects. The court was stunned. This was no longer just a case against Sean Combs. It was like a window into an underground world that only a few people knew about, but now the whole country was hearing about. When Ben Affleck uttered the name Barack Obama, the courtroom fell silent. So silent that you could hear a pin drop. It sounded like a line from the finale of a suspenseful movie, but it was happening right in front of the jury and the cameras. He didn't shout or pause for effect. He just said, as if in passing, that the former US president knew about the existence of this entire underground scheme. Affleck claimed that Obama was aware of the money laundering network, the transportation of people, the blackmail, and the shady operations linked to Sean Combs and others. Moreover, according to him, the president had the opportunity to stop it all, at the very least, to launch an investigation. But he allegedly chose to turn a blind eye. Why? The actor did not explain. He just uttered a phrase that made the atmosphere even colder. Everyone knew everything. It's just that no one wanted to get involved in this mess. The courtroom literally froze. People didn't blink. Lawyers exchanged glances, some with disbelief, some with poorly concealed interest. Prosecutors reacted immediately, demanding explanations, sources, and evidence. They were clearly not prepared for the witness to suddenly drag the former head of state into the case. But Affleck refused to give details. He looked firm but cautious. He probably realized that he had said something that could have consequences far beyond a court case against a hip-hop star. He made it clear that he had information, but he was not going to reveal it. At least not now and not in this courtroom. This further inflamed the situation. Now the case seemed to be more than just a criminal matter. It began to look like part of something bigger, more complicated, and politically dangerous. And the audience in the courtroom could feel it. It was as if they were witnessing the moment when a crack in the facade of the glossy world turned into a gaping hole. But the real blow to public perception came when Ben Affleck unexpectedly mentioned Jennifer Lopez. Until then, her name had only been mentioned in the context of romantic headlines. The former Combs, now Affleck. A beautiful story worthy of glossy magazine covers. But in court, it sounded different. Not like a love triangle, but like part of a structure more reminiscent of a mafia network. According to Affleck, Jennifer Lopez's name came up more than once in the notes he handed over to investigators. And no, she wasn't mentioned as an innocent companion who happened to be there. She was described as someone who allegedly played a specific and, according to Affleck, important role in the logistics of the criminal scheme. The actor claimed that Lopez was aware of all of Combs' activities. Moreover, she allegedly participated in coordinating some of the shipments, possibly the very routes through tunnels and private facilities. Also, according to Affleck, she was involved in managing assets related to shadow finances. In other words, according to him, she was not just a passive figure, but a participant in the process, albeit not as an organizer, but clearly not unaware of what was going on. When he said this, the faces in the courtroom literally froze. One of the jurors even coughed, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. One of the reporters immediately began typing a message to his editor. The prosecutors, who had been focused on the details, now became much more tense. The lawyers began whispering animatedly, trying to figure out whether this could be considered a new line of investigation. Affleck spoke without emotion, almost wearily. There was no revenge, no malice, just a sense that he had finally said what he had been carrying inside him for too long. He did not specify whether Lopez had participated of her own free will or had simply been dragged into it. But the very fact that he had brought the subject up in court made it clear that no one was untouchable in this case. No actors, no singers, no presidents. Everything that used to be hidden behind the scenes was now under oath and under scrutiny. Ben Affleck admitted that realizing how deeply Jennifer Lopez was involved in this whole dark network was a real personal tragedy for him. He said that at first he tried to convince himself that she was not involved, that she was just a victim of circumstances or did not know the whole truth. He wanted to believe in the best, clinging to the hope that their relationship was based on honesty and trust. But over time, he said, he began to find more and more evidence to the contrary. Records, conversations, documents. Everything pointed to the fact that her double life was not a figment of his imagination or a mistake in his perception, but reality. For Affleck, it was a blow from which it was difficult to recover. He felt that his world was falling apart before his eyes, that the person he loved and trusted was part of something he could not understand or accept. According to him, it was this break with the truth that marked the point when their relationship began to fall apart. He admitted that he couldn't accept that he was with someone who was living a double life and who might have been involved in illegal and dangerous activities. The pain, inner conflict, and sense of betrayal were evident in his voice and manner of speaking. He didn't speak as an accuser, but as someone who had experienced deep disappointment. Thus, Affleck's testimony added not only new details to the case, but also a human emotional layer and a story of love, trust, and betrayal that turned out to be connected to a large-scale criminal network. After Affleck's testimony and related statements became public, a real panic began. The celebrities and influential figures whose names appeared in the case files began to act swiftly. Some quietly packed their bags and left for Europe. Others chose secluded islands in the Caribbean, and still others decided to hide in Latin America, far from the eyes and ears of the investigation. This rush looked like an escape from a shadow that had suddenly grown and threatened their reputations, and possibly their freedom. The fate of the case had already gone far beyond the courtroom and become a topic of public discussion. Prosecutors reacted immediately, requesting increased security for key witnesses, fearing that someone might try to influence them or silence them. At the same time, the FBI took control of all the evidence provided by Affleck. The agency began to carefully examine the records, photographs, diagrams, and audio recordings, trying to find confirmation of the actor's words and piece together a complete picture. This was the beginning of a large-scale investigation that, according to many, could uncover a whole web of crime and corruption extending far beyond the world of show business. The situation became increasingly tense. The media and the public were watching every move, and there were already whispers in the corridors that new high-profile revelations could follow in the near future. It seemed that the story was only gaining momentum and promised to become one of the biggest scandals of recent years. Despite the storm raging around him, Sean Diddy Combs chose a much more restrained and measured approach this time around. He refused to speak to the press or make any public statements. Instead, his lawyers issued an official statement saying that all of Ben Affleck's allegations were lies, baseless slander, and an attempt to undermine his reputation. Combs' defense team did not simply reject Affleck's testimony. They harshly criticized him as a witness, calling him an actor who got too deep into his role in an attempt to discredit him and cast doubt on the veracity of his entire story. According to them, the prosecution has no real credible evidence to support the allegations. This move by the defense appeared to be an attempt not only to save Combs' reputation, but also to shift attention to the dubious nature and possible motives of Affleck himself. As a result, the atmosphere in the courtroom became even more tense. On the one hand, there were detailed and sensational accusations, and on the other, a resolute rebuff and doubts about the authenticity of the evidence. So, despite the scale of the scandal and the growing media hype, Combs remained calm and ready to fight for his name through legal channels, trying not to panic and maintain control of the situation. Although Combs' defense team tried to dismiss all charges, the court nevertheless accepted the materials provided by Ben Affleck for consideration. Now the court is discussing which other celebrities and influential people should be called in for questioning. Rumor has it that the list includes not only famous rappers and Hollywood actors, but also a former senator, a figure who adds even more political weight to the case. Discussions are ongoing. Judges and prosecutors are trying to decide who exactly can be called as witnesses or suspects in order to better understand the scope and structure of this mysterious network. Meanwhile, there is talk in the court corridors. And beyond that, some of those involved in this criminal system have already begun cooperating with the investigation in an attempt to reduce their liability and receive a more lenient sentence. This information is unofficial, but a source close to the investigation has allegedly confirmed that such deals are indeed being made. This means that the case could take new turns and reveal information that has remained hidden until now. The atmosphere in the courtroom now resembles a tense chess match, with each side making cautious moves in an attempt to get the most out of the situation. Overall, the case is gaining momentum and looks like it will be far from as simple as it seemed at the beginning. The public and the media are closely following every development, waiting to see who will be next to take the stand or the witness box. Ben Affleck is currently under heavy security. Law enforcement agencies make no secret of the fact that they consider him a key witness whose testimony could jeopardize many influential people. He himself claims that he has only told part of what he knows and is ready to give additional testimony at the next court hearing, which is what happened. His lawyers emphasize that he is fully aware of the dangers associated with this case. They say that Affleck understands that his testimony could provoke strong opposition and even direct threats, but he is determined to see it through to the end for the sake of truth and justice. This adds even more drama and tension to the trial. A key witness under protection, ready to reveal new details, and parties who understand that much is at stake in his words. The atmosphere in the courtroom becomes increasingly heated, and the public closely follows every step of the case. At the second court hearing, Ben Affleck took the stand again, and his testimony became even more gripping and detailed. He began by recounting how he first encountered Sean Combs' suspicious activities. According to him, it happened several years ago at a private party, an event attended only by a select few. There, he noticed strange conversations in the presence of people who were clearly not just partygoers or socialites. They seemed to be involved in something much more serious and dangerous. Affleck explained that after this encounter, his interest turned to suspicion, and he began to closely monitor what was happening around Combs and his inner circle. He said he saw cars leaving elite nightclubs with suspicious cargo. No one specified what exactly was in them. But from the appearance and behavior of the drivers, it was clear that this was not a normal delivery. He also mentioned hidden entrances and secret passages through which, according to his observations, large sums of money were passing. The process of trying to gather real evidence proved particularly difficult for him. Affleck said that he tried to pass the information on to law enforcement agencies, but each time he encountered serious resistance. Some threatened him personally, some offered him money to cover up the case, and some simply ignored his statements. This only fueled his determination. He understood that the truth was somewhere close, but getting to it would not be easy. At this hearing, Ben Affleck spoke in detail about one of the key operations in which, according to him, Jennifer Lopez was involved. He said that he personally observed her managing the entire transport operation. She controlled the process, coordinated people, and made sure that everything went smoothly and without problems. This came as a real shock to him. He had previously thought that she was just close to Combs and that their relationship was personal, not criminal. But now he realized that her role was much more serious and that she was deeply involved in this criminal activity. Affleck also explained that he had substantial evidence that the whole scheme was large-scale and involved not only drug trafficking, but also money laundering. He stated that the documents he had provided clearly showed how the money passed through complex chains, charitable foundations, investment projects, and even startups. All of this was used to conceal the illegal origin of the funds and hide the real owners. These details gave the case even more weight, showing that this was a real criminal network with a multi-million-dollar turnover and a carefully thought-out scheme. Not just rumors or coincidences. Those in the courtroom felt that a large-scale investigation was unfolding before their eyes. One that could shake not only the world of show business, but also financial and political circles. When Ben Affleck began to talk about the evidence, he dwelled at length on several key documents and materials which, according to him, confirmed the scale and clear organization of the criminal activities of Sean Diddy Combs and his entourage. First, he mentioned correspondence, emails and messages that recorded discussions of various plans, from drug trafficking to complex money laundering schemes. Interestingly, these messages were disguised as ordinary business conversations so that they would not be noticed or easily understood. But thanks to the efforts of Affleck and his team, these hidden messages were found, decrypted, and presented to the court as compelling evidence. In addition, he showed surveillance camera footage taken at several well-known nightclubs and upscale restaurants. According to him, this is where secret meetings and deals took place. According to Affleck, the video clearly shows people from Combs' team meeting with suspicious figures, passing bags of money and items that most likely contained illegal substances. This material created the impression that a real criminal drama was unfolding in court, where every document and frame of video was a brick in the huge house of the criminal world that they were trying to destroy. Affleck's testimony and evidence heightened the tension in the courtroom and made everyone present realize that the story was much more serious and far-reaching than it had initially appeared. Ben Affleck also spoke in detail about financial documents. In particular, bank statements showing large money transfers between offshore accounts and charitable foundations linked to Combs and Lopez. According to him, these transactions were cleverly disguised as legitimate operations so that no one would suspect the illegal origin of the funds. However, a thorough analysis of the documents showed that the real purpose of these transfers was to hide where the money actually came from. Affleck paid particular attention to the testimony of several witnesses who decided to cooperate with the investigation. According to him, these people described the internal structure of the organization, who was responsible for what, how roles and responsibilities were distributed at each stage, from the delivery of drugs to their sale and money laundering. One of these witnesses described in detail how Jennifer Lopez oversaw financial flows, monitored the security of transactions, and ensured that all orders were fulfilled without a hitch. This testimony added even more gravity to the case. It was now clear that this was a carefully organized system where everyone knew their place and performed specific functions, and Lopez played a very important role in this chain. All these details made the charges even more convincing and put not only Combs, but also his inner circle at risk. Among other things, audio recordings of telephone conversations were presented in court, in which instructions from Sean Combs and Jennifer Lopez can be clearly heard. In these conversations, they discuss how to avoid police attention, what security measures to take when transporting goods, and how to respond to possible risks. Ben Affleck emphasized that these recordings were made secretly, without the knowledge of those involved, and are therefore considered some of the most compelling evidence. It is virtually impossible to falsify such material, which significantly strengthens the prosecution's case. In addition, Affleck said that several independent expert examinations had been conducted. Specialists thoroughly checked the authenticity of the documents and compared the financial flows with the alleged crimes. According to their conclusions, all the materials presented are completely consistent with reality and confirm the investigation's version. According to Affleck, it is this evidence that creates a solid and impenetrable foundation for the charges. They make it virtually impossible for Combs and his accomplices to be acquitted, and it is now clear that the case will move forward with serious consequences for all involved. At the end of his speech, Ben Affleck made a loud and unexpected statement, claiming that former President Barack Obama was aware of this entire large-scale scheme but deliberately turned a blind eye to it. According to Affleck, this is not simply inaction, but part of a much more complex political game. In this game, influential figures prefer to remain silent in order to prevent a scandal that could rock the entire country and affect political stability. These words sent a wave of shock through the courtroom. The judges and everyone present literally froze, realizing the scale of the allegations and the depth of the alleged criminal network. Prosecutors immediately began actively questioning Affleck, trying to extract additional details and clarifications from him. At the same time, defense attorneys were already preparing new counter-arguments to refute such serious allegations and defend their client. The atmosphere in this courtroom became tense and heated, as if on the eve of a major storm, when truth and political interests clash in a fierce battle. Sources close to the investigation claim that this case is only the beginning of a big story and that new arrests may follow in the near future. Many are convinced that this is only the tip of the iceberg and that much deeper and more extensive connections will be uncovered. It is said that other well-known figures will soon appear on the lists of suspects and witnesses, including musicians, actors, and former politicians who may be involved in this criminal network. All this creates the impression that the investigation is far from over, and that many more sensational discoveries and surprises await us. Judging by all appearances, this story has the potential to seriously shake up not only the entertainment industry, but also the political and financial elite.